Hey everybody, welcome back to part 2 of the How to Change Your Oil series here on behalf of Chevron. I'm Brian with Diesel and Iron. So the first thing is, if you haven't watched part 1 of the series, make sure you go and watch part 1 so that you know what our supplies are and what you're getting into. For part 2, we're going to start off with just how to prep for actually draining the oil. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the cab of the truck, and as I pop the door open, you're going to hear the dinging. We actually still have our keys in the ignition. We're going to remove those from the ignition, not only for your own safety, but just in case someone comes along and decides to start your truck with no oil in it. Not a good deal. Second thing, and this is very, very important, we want to set our parking brake. The reason we do that, this particular truck is high enough that we didn't have to jack it up off the floor at all. But if you use any sort of a jack or jack stands, just because you have the truck in park doesn't necessarily make sure that all of the wheels don't move. We want to make sure we set our parking brakes so that we're totally safe before climbing under a vehicle. So now what we need to do is we actually need to pop the hood. You generally have a latch right here. You're just going to pull that, but it's not going to totally release your hood. So come up to the front here. And this is where everyone always feels like an idiot, because you have to find the actual release, and it always takes 15 minutes of fumbling around before you find it. You'll release that, and there we are. Now the last thing we're going to do before we actually start our oil drain is we're just going to crack the oil fill spout. And the reason we do that is so that this can let air into the system as we drain the oil out the bottom. So I'm going to come over here with my paper towel. We're just going to wipe this off really quick, just in case there's any loose debris that might fall in. We don't want to have that get into our engine. And then we're just going to crack that. We don't have to do anything with it. You're just going to make sure the air can get in there, and that's all we have to do. So now Rick's going to meet you guys under the truck, and we'll work on draining the oil.
All right, guys, I'm getting ready to dive underneath the truck here. As you can see, this is where the PPE is really going to come into play. A lot of sharp objects on the truck, the hard floor, just objects everywhere with metal. As you can see, I actually have a piece of styrofoam I'm kneeling on right now. I'm laying on hard concrete, so I want to make it as comfortable as I possibly can to help ease some of the pain. I got floor absorbent right here just in case this gets out of control a little bit. I got the paper towel. I got the brake clean just to keep everything clean. I got the oil pan, oil filter, oil wrench, and then we got the ratchet to pull that drain plug. And I'll catch you guys underneath. All right, guys, welcome down below. First things first, identify the plugs. There's a couple plugs here. This one right here, do not pull this plug. This is the transmission plug, right? It looks similar. It's close enough because that's how the truck runs and shifts gears, right? Identify your oil plug. And what I'm going to do, just like below, I'm going to keep this clean. Try to wipe off some of the debris, right? You got a little road grime up on top of it. I'm going to just wipe that off. Oil filter right here. This is your oil filter. This truck has fuel filters too. This is the oil filter. It's typically right next to the engine oil pan, okay? What I'm going to do instantly, if you guys haven't noticed, some of these come wrapped, some don't. I'm actually got this face down on a paper towel to keep the debris and everything out of the oil filter, right? We don't want debris in the engine oil. Second thing, when I pull this oil filter, you're going to notice there's a rubber oil ring on top. Sometimes these will stick up on top of the housing. You want to make sure once you pull that oil filter that rubber gasket is basically with the oil filter. If it's not, reach up there, peel it back off. Okay? Here we go. We're going to use this socket. We're just going to crack this. And needless to say, I got the oil pan right here, but before I actually start getting this to drip oil and start just letting this thing run like a madman, there's a vent plug in here. Make sure you pull that vent plug to fill this oil catch pan. Okay? I'm going to let this slowly drain, and I'm going to have to move this oil pan as fast as I possibly can to catch the oil. So here we go. This is where the gloves are going to come into play. The engine's been hot. The oil's hot. You want it up to optimal temperature. Here she goes. And once this comes shooting out, it's not going to come straight down. It's under pressure. Woo, there she goes. So next, what I'm going to do is this oil plug. I'm just going to put it right in the oil pan. We'll clean it up. Don't throw that down on the ground. get any kind of debris. We'll use the brake clean paper towels to clean it up because we want this to actually stay clean as we're putting the oil plug back in. All right, guys, as we're getting down to the last little bit of oil draining right here, we're going to use the oil filter wrench. There's going to be a little bit of residual oil in the oil filter. You're going to turn it to the left. I'm upside down here, so to the left. Again, put that oil pan straight underneath it to catch what oil we got. I'm just gonna let it drain because that stuff is hot. We're gonna pull this oil filter off now. And I've used every aspect of my PPE with my gloves. I got road grime falling into my safety glasses, keeping it on my eyeballs. Take that, I'm gonna dump it out. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually checking for that rubber seal, and it's actually on the filter. So I'm gonna pull this glove off just so I could hang on to that oil filter with the dry. What I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna take a little bit of engine oil and I wanna put it on this seal. That's going to create a good suction. Once that oil is done draining from the motor, I'm going to actually reach up and just tighten it and put it on hand tight. All right, guys, I got the oil on the oil seal right here. Now, when you put this up onto the housing here, you just want to put it hand tight because once the engine actually gets up and running, it's going to actually cinch down and get a little bit tighter. You don't want to cross thread this. If we ever catch that thread. There we go. Once I get the oil pan in, or the oil plug in, I'll actually wipe the filter down. I'll put it in hand tight where I could get a good grip in without the gloves on. But since we're still dealing with the engine oil right now, I'm gonna wipe that off. I'm gonna find our oil plug again. We're gonna actually wipe that off and keep it clean, just in case we got any kind of debris up on there. I'll wipe that plug off one more time. I'm gonna tighten it down. Wipe her off one more time. We're gonna tighten that drain plug down. You don't want to reef on it, where it's to the point you're, pulling the threads right out of it, but you want to have it snug. I'm gonna take my glove off. And now I'm just gonna grab that oil filter on and crank it hand tight. That's all you're gonna need. All right, guys, that's it. I'm gonna clean up here and we'll catch you up top with Brian.